Hello everybody, today on the channel, the Smart Roadster, a car whose major crime appears to be the fact it arrived about 15 years too early. I'm sure, like myself, every now and again when you've been going through the classifieds, you've spotted one of these and gone, oh yeah, I forgot about those. I wonder if they're actually any good. Well, today, I'm gonna find out. If today's video inspires you to head off to the classifieds in search of your bargain beauty, don't forget to take CarVertical with you, because remember, a good deal is only a good deal if you're buying the car you've been promised. CarVertical will help you uncover a car's hidden history, including mileage issues, accident damage regardless of write-off status, theft, fire, and even things like usage as a taxi. Though I think you're probably safe when it comes to smart roadsters on that front. It'll also check for outstanding finance and cross-references a network of databases from around the globe to give you all the information you want to know on any potential purchase. It takes just 60 seconds, all you need is a registration or VIN number, it works on both desktop or with a mobile app, and even better, for 10% off, don't forget to use my discount code, JAYEMM. The Smart Roadster was the second product to come from that most unlikely of collaborations between the Swiss, the Germans, and the French. Representing the Swiss, we have the watch manufacturer Swatch. Over in Germany, Mercedes-Benz, and then finally, France is the site of where these cars were built. The first, and no doubt best remembered fruit of this collaboration was the original, the car that still today is called by many simply the Smart. In its day, we called it the City Coupe and later the 4.2. Unfortunately, despite some fundamentally solid principles, the original did not get off to a good start. You would have thought that the idea of a nice, decent, high-quality, well-engineered yet very compact car designed for the city centres and backed by a prestigious manufacturer such as Mercedes would sell like hotcakes. And indeed, that's what they expected. Sadly, they did not. Between the discovery of some rather unwanted handling characteristics, the inherent compromise of a strict two-seater layout, and the fact that many deemed it to be simply too expensive for what ultimately was a luxury item and not the essential Mercedes I think thought it was going to be, they just didn't sell, at least in the numbers that they had expected. So the engineers returned to the drawing board thinking of how they could expand the lineup and get a few more potential sales. The result was this, the Smart Roadster, available confusingly in two guises, the convertible or the coupe, both of which were actually, technically speaking, a convertible, with a rather trick little soft-top arrangement that essentially folds back into the car, and then the side panels can simply be removed to give you that proper Targa experience. The major difference between the two is the fact that the coupe has this rather Z3 coupe-like arrangement at the back, with a perspex covered section that gives you a second boot joining that you've already got at the front. Like the original Smart, it's a strict two-seater, but also, like that car, it has a little bit more space in it than you might expect. As the original was already costing Mercedes quite a bit more money than they had hoped, this car was engineered to use as many of the existing components as possible. So here you have essentially the same McPherson strut and a Dion suspension as you'd find in the coupe, though of course re-engineered and tweaked to suit the Roadster. The car is overall a whole metre longer, but still comprises the same basic layout of the Tridion steel safety cell with plastic panels surrounding it. This gives the car its impressively low curb weight of just under 800 kilos in a Roadster guise and just over in coupe form. The engine and gearbox were also carried over, again largely unchanged and offered in the same trims. Regardless of which you chose, you got a just shy of 700cc turbocharged 3-cylinder, not built by Mercedes but instead tweaked by them. The base model featured a 61 horsepower variant, then you had the 82 horsepower, and at the top of the tree, this, the Brabus, featuring a mighty 99 horses, or just over 100 PS. Torque was 96 pound-foot, that's 130 Newton-meters. In other words, a good number for a motorbike. Though it's hardly a legend, the engine is one that actually a lot of people have something of a fondness for on account of that distinctive 3-cylinder thrum and the fact it's quite happy to give you whatever it has. The gearbox is somewhat less loved. Technically speaking, it is a 6-speed automated manual. which for a car built in the early 2000s sounds perfectly reasonable. It was high-tech at the time. However, I have heard stories that what this actually has is a 3-speed semi-automated manual and essentially a high-low range box. An overdrive, I suppose. That explains why on occasion the changes take an absolute age. I have up until now been driving the car in auto mode, and though it isn't quite as horrific as I do recall the City Coupe being, neither is it particularly brilliant. And on occasion it will just inexplicably let the car rev all the way out, despite the fact that there is no sport button, and if there was, I haven't pressed it. Right, one important test of the smart car, the patent-pending 3-point turn hill start torture test. Oh, where it does very, very well. It's got hill hold assist, I can tell you. Also, visibility's really good, especially with all the glass this has got. You can see basically everywhere. Compared to just about anything modern, it's a delight. Right, how does this manage the clutch getting off the line? Yeah, not so bad. Not so bad. As with the regular smart car, I think the introduction of a Brabus trim was a genius move, because if you wanted a Brabus badged car otherwise, you were going to have to pay serious money. But these cost you only a couple of grand more over getting a regular one, and for that you got some bespoke cosmetic tweaks, including a little chin spoiler at the front, a slightly different treatment for the rear end, which I've got to say actually looks really good. In fact, the whole car, I think, is a bit of a looker. From directly behind, I think it's even got shades of sort of V6 Clio about it. I really like it. The coupe in particular is a distinctive looking thing too, and honestly I'd kind of forgotten they made them this shape. I always think of them as the regular Roadster with its sort of up, down and along sort of, Triumph TR7 Porsche 914 styling. You also get these 16-inch monoblock wheels, which I am told are a bit of a pain because they are notoriously soft. That is one issue that this car's owner Colin has had to deal with already. Up until recently, the car was fine, but last week he found that one wheel does seem to be losing air pressure and so does need to be investigated further. Happily today it does seem to be behaving itself. Inside you then got a vague attempt at a slightly more upmarket interior, but like the original smart car, this is one of the areas I think that Mercedes made a bit of a mistake. Because though they were trying to make these an affordable, accessible car, let's face it, a 2-seater is almost always a bit of a luxury. A 2-seater convertible, even more so. And the fact is, yes, these weren't particularly expensive, but neither do they really feel it. That's a shame. My favourite part of the interior being you've got this nice metal handbrake down here, which you can't actually engage with the armrest in place because the two will foul each other. You have a little Brabus topper to the gear lever, which also is the start button, and that I quite like. The rest of it, aside from a little bit of extra leather, is essentially business as usual. In other words, it's not great. But it does feel quite special, this. It does have a feeling of fun about it. You sit super low. My favourite bit being that unlike just about anything modern, I can actually see over my shoulder. The B-pillar is nice and far back, there's loads of glass here, and on account of all the clear stuff in the car, even over there, I can see exactly what's going on. This is a really easy car to just drive about and do the normal day-to-day bit. Ingress and egress isn't all that bad. I'm 5'10" with a long torso, as you already likely know, but even so, I can get in the car relatively easily. I wouldn't want to be much taller, mind, but I think for the vast majority of people under about 6'1", 6'2", they should be able to fit. If anything's going to be an issue, it's this steering wheel, because it is on the large side and it doesn't have any adjustment in it. With the twin boots, I would actually even say this is a great mini GT car. The only real negative for me in that regard is the fact the suspension just isn't as comfy as you like, though on a motorway that's not an issue, and the other being it is quite noisy. Even at the sort of 50-60 mile an hour, there's quite a bit of tyre and wind noise coming through, and that might grate after a while. The car even does decent fuel economy. When you're thrashing it, you'll get somewhere in the 40s, and when you're not, you'll get somewhere in the low 50s, which is superb. But of course, it's the same if you go and buy the regular City Coupe. So then, provided you only need the 2 seats, I actually think this, like the City Coupe, is an excellent, very sensible and rather frugal daily driver. But that's not why you buy the Roadster, is it? If you want a simple, sensible daily, the City Coupe is going to be better on account of its packaging. You buy the Roadster because every now and again you want to have fun. So, time to find out what this is like when you get the Roadster yourself and you're in the mood. I've put the car into manual, which you do by pressing the button on the side of the lever. You can also use said lever to change gear, rowing up and down, or the paddles on the wheel, which are an option that I think is standard on the Brabus. Let's go. You know something? This car has one fundamental problem. That engine, and the gearbox really, are utterly and totally outclassed by the chassis. Nearly the entire time I've been driving this back there, I've been foot absolutely welded to the floor, and I still need more. The car is just sat there twiddling its thumbs going, are we going to get a move on or what? And the engine just hasn't got a response for that. It needs about, I would say, at least another 50% more power, and then it would be really, really something. As it is, I really enjoy it, but it's seriously hard work just to get the thing up to speed. I mean, there's 60 mile an hour, we've got a bend coming up, so I'm going to slow down a little bit. Grip is actually really, really good. The car does have power steering, but it turns itself off after a little while, and then we're out of the bend, we're up to 55. There's 60. All right, let's go into another tight one. Left-hander this coming up. So drop a gear, and that does take a while to respond. Another. Okay, we're down to about 40 here, which is definitely slower than I need to be going. I feel like actually this engine could do with about another 2,000 RPM. Funnily enough, Colin also has a Suzuki Cappuccino, and that does rev to about 9.5 grand, which I think really is what this should be doing. The brakes actually are pretty decent. I mean, they don't really have that much car to stop, even with me sitting in it, and they do a fine job. The suspension, you can feel, is on the basic side. It never really wants to quite work with the road, but you also never feel like it's going to get you in too much trouble. It doesn't have that suppleness of a more complicated setup, and that's a bit of a shame, really. I suspect that the low-profile tyres are also not really helping here. Okay, I'm going to pop it back into Automotive to this little bit here. Let's turn around. Oh yeah, can we just do? Yeah, we can. Hey, happy days. Oh, yeah, that's what the gearbox is like. I would say that lifting does help smooth the shifts out, but honestly, it doesn't. Not really. Right, let's give it some big stick, shall we? I mean, let's really thrash this car. Right, we're doing 30 mile an hour now, and I'm in third gear doing 3 and a bit thousand RPM, and foot flat to the floor. Flat. There's the kick down button. That's 40. That's 50. I've got to change. Oh, there's the speed limit. It'll get there, but it needs more. It's so frustrating because actually I am having a whale of a time. I really like this car. The seats are okay, they're not the best, they don't really hold you in all that much. It's got grip for days. I mean, 205 section fronts and 225 section rears. That's the same as the Ferrari 328 that I drove a couple of weeks ago. So, yeah, considering that was a car with nearly triple the power and still felt like it had ample traction, this is, yeah, a little bit overtired. With the car being, I suppose, technically just about mid-engined, although it's bordering on rear-engined and rear-wheel drive, you might be tempted to try and draw a comparison with, say, a Lotus Elise or a 911. It does have a rearward weight bias to it. About 56% or so is over the back axle, but it just doesn't feel like either of those. I think simply because there just isn't that much weight in it. It won't feel like a 911, and the Elise just steers in a totally different way, so it doesn't really feel quite like one of those either. That honestly isn't a problem because I didn't really ever expect it to feel like a pint-sized Elise. So this is all well and good, but there are a few downsides. Those who watch the channel will probably know that I have a fairly strict rule that I think is common amongst many British people, that when it's not raining and you're in a convertible, you have the roof down, which today I was rather looking forward to. It's not exactly warm outside, but it is dry. However, the roof on this car no longer goes down. A very big issue with these, I am told, is the fact that they leak. This is apparently such a problem that when Colin arrived this morning, I noticed the fact he actually had a couple of towels stuffed strategically behind the headrests to try and stop whatever was getting in. It eventually got to the point where he got, first gen Insight, that's amazing. It eventually got to the point that he tired of it so much he said, sod it, and has basically been sealing in the roof section. When I said to him, why don't you just try and put a solid piece on there? I know that they did do an optional hard top. He said, well, yes, that's something he's considered, but they're 800 quid. And they leak too. Since filming, the leaks have finally been stopped, and the loss of the roof wasn't a big deal for Colin because he has the cappuccino for those wind in the hair days. So commonplace is this problem that rather than the Roadster adding to the coffers over at Mercedes, it in fact was another source of their financial ruination. And that's a great shame. Possibly also a reason that the car was so short-lived, being in production from only 2002 until 2005. Other issues, the already mentioned interior, which if you were coming from, say, the likes of an old first or second generation MX-5, was just not really going to impress you all that much. If I were on the hunt for a convertible today and you were cross-shopping one of these with, say, a third gen MX-5, well, the Mazda is just a far, far nicer space to spend a little bit of time. I think a little less special feeling perhaps on account of the seating position, but still, definitely a more quality product. Though I don't believe, and I could be wrong here, comment section please help me out, they don't have too many deal-breaking issues, water ingress aside. The biggest problem that these have, again shared with the City Coupe, is the fact that spares are very expensive. When you consider that they were designed to be an affordable car, all of the bits for them are priced just like they would be on a Mercedes, and that's always been an issue for these. To the extent that I think there are likely a lot of these that are going to be broken when they could easily be saved, simply because of the fact that trying to fix them is just too costly. Other times you will then find that there are parts for the Roadster which are actually specific to it that you wouldn't expect. Case in point, the stereo. When Colin got this, he saw that it had your regular classic aftermarket single-din unit installed, which he wanted to replace with something a little more OEM looking. So he bought a radio from a Smart 2, which looked like it would fit, but it doesn't. And most annoyingly, it does look like it could have easily been built in a way that it would have fitted, but for some reason, it's just different enough that it won't. That's a frustration. But good news, because as it happens, I think, in spite of its many flaws, this car is actually a brilliant purchase for anybody that wants something a little bit sporty, but has to keep one eye on their expenditure. First off, in the classifieds, they don't command all that much money. The cheapest example of a Smart Roadster I could find was about £3,000, and the cheapest Brabus about £5,000, which makes it roughly equivalent, as far as I'm concerned, to a late NB or early NC MX-5. And though it's not got the performance of either of those really, it is, I think, different enough that it should likely appeal to the sort of person that's interested in that kind of car, or maybe even a Japanese K car, but has found that those are all out of budget, or maybe just a little too impractical. Even the absolute best examples out there seem to command a little less than £10,000, making these, as far as I'm concerned, a relative bargaining. Regular servicing and maintenance shouldn't be all that bad, though do be aware on occasion, because of the way they've been built, it might be a little more than you're used to, but hopefully nothing horrendous. The fuel economy I've already mentioned, though frustratingly they're about 6 milligrams too bad on the CO2 scale to qualify for the £30 a year tax. Instead, they're about 150 quid a year, which again I don't think is terrible. Colin is 2 days shy of his 26th birthday, and for this, on a multi-car policy with his Alfa Romeo 159, it's only £600 a year. That's very good. Crikey, even overtaking a bloke on a quad bike was more of an ordeal than it should be. Just needs more go, this thing. And at the end of the day, it may not be the last word in driver interaction, but you know what? You can absolutely, definitely have a lot of fun in a Smart Roadster. And so, for that reason, it gets a big thumbs up from me. I want to say a huge thank you to Colin for bringing it out, and as ever, to you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.